This is the difference in reality versus public school. My son just went to this apologetics conference. He's talking to me. He's 15. And he's like, hey, Dad, the other night he was telling Lady Rackets about the conference, but I had to leave. I had to go do something. So I didn't get to hear about it. And he's like, and I was like, I want to hear about this thing that you went to go do, because let me be clear. I'm a Christian, but I'm a lawyer and I'm an asshole. So like when I hear apologetics, Christian apologetics in particular, I am immediately skeptical, because apologetics is not a search for truth. Apologetics is a search for answers to questions. That is not the same thing as finding truth. It is the same thing as finding a proof text or a source to match the thing you want, and then assertively professing its correctness. There's value in apologetics. It's a persuasive argument, but it does not necessarily mean truth. That being said, I'm like, I do want to hear about it, because I always love to hear what contemporary Christians are telling children. And we're driving today. He's like, Dad, you wanted me to tell you about this conference? I'm like, yeah. Tell me about it. And he goes, okay, well, I missed the first part. I'm like, why'd you miss the first part? He was like, well, our bus was late. I was like, oh, you didn't miss the first part. All of you did. Okay, great. And then he's like, then we talked about transgenderism. And he goes, because they have to talk about the hot topics, And I was like, that was the dorkiest thing you have ever said. But then he starts telling me about how, like, he's like, look, there's two pillars that support transgenderism. It's cultural and it's scientific. And if you put either one up to the test, they're knocked down immediately by both faith and by science. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I don't do. So here's my thing. Like, obviously, transgenderism is a thing that is not a truth. Transgenderism is it's a choice. It's an identity, whatever you want it to be. That's like, I'm a libertarian. I don't care what you do with your body, but don't come at me and be like, I was born a woman. It's like, well, no, you were born a man.
Don't teach my 6th grader or my 5th grader that a man can have a baby, and don't teach my child any of this shit that is actually your religion. You're not allowed to impose your religion on me. This is a belief system. It's nothing else but a belief system. You can have it, you can live it, but don't you dare come and try and put it on my kids.
Exactly. And this is what I'm talking about, though. Real quick, Dapper Dave says, that's not true. Christian apologetics is extremely important. Do not mistake my logical criticism of Christian apologetics as being unimportant. God is not a logically sustainable conclusion. He is not an evidence-based conclusion. That's why faith is the most integral part of the Christian foundation, is that you have to look at society, you have to look at everything around you, and you go, logic doesn't get me to this thing, because if logic ruled, I'm fucked. But logic doesn't rule, because faith in a compassionate and forgiving God defies all logic. It says there's all these rules, and you will fail at every single step of every single rule. You cannot be good enough. And yet, in my compassion and my love for you, I will say, welcome home. This is a prodigal son story. It's not the prodigal son story, though. It is the every parent story. Your kid does not need to run off and spend their inheritance on whores and drugs for them to come back and you to embrace them. Your kid goes to college. Your kid makes a mistake. Your kid gets fired from his first job. Your kid gets a divorce, and they say, Mom, Dad, I'm trying. I'm 28 and I don't know what to do. I spent all my money trying to make my marriage work, and now I can't afford rent. I can't afford anything. You go, come home, you idiot. Get in this fucking house that I built for you. I built a shelter for you until I'm dead. And then I'm going to give that shelter to you because you might need it after I'm dead. That's parenting. And it's also marriage, and it's every relationship you have. Every relationship is the unconditionality of it is based on this Christian idea that you will never, ever, ever be good enough. In the face of all logic, you will fail. But in the face of faith, grace, and love, you succeed because the other party has compassion for you. And we're taught how to treat everybody else through that. Christian apologetics is this weird place of trying to argue for that thing while not acknowledging grace. Now, it is important because some people's brains, look, you guys are on YouTube watching lawyers at fucking 3 a.m. You are autistic retards. I love you all, but you are. Like, why would you do this? You at this time of night, you should be drinking and watching women be naked, or men, if that's your thing. You should not be watching lawyers on YouTube and Megan. You shouldn't be doing that. You should go find something and you should make yourself go to sleep by exhausting yourself, because that's what logical humans do. They fulfill their carnality. They fulfill their base desires. They do not fulfill this need to be intellectually stimulated and challenged by people who have thoughts that might be different than them. That's not logical. In the same way that Christian apologetics must appeal to these people who need logic. They need reason, but that's not necessary for Christianity. It is just a thing that appeals to a certain group of people who think a certain way. That doesn't make it unimportant. Don't get me wrong, but it is unnecessary for faith. Apologetics have never entered into the faith equation because faith flies in the face of apologetics. Apologetics are trying to use reason to explain something that's unreasonable. And the unreasonable thing is that you can say, fuck you to God every single day of your life. And if at the end of it, you go, I was wrong, and actually, like, you're great. And he goes, welcome home. Just like a good parent would do to the kid who says, fuck you every day to you as a dad, and you love the shit out of them, and they may not know all the ways they're wrong, but when they're at their lowest, they go, Dad, I know I said fuck you to you every single day, but I don't have anywhere else to turn. You go, come home. Come home. Of course you come home. And they go, why would you let me home? Because I made you, you dumbass. I know everything you think. I've thought it all before. Get over here. I forgive you. That is why apologetics are a weird thing, because it flies in the face. But just because it's weird doesn't make it unvaluable. Some people think that way and they need that logical thing. Anyway, I'm ranting too much on this. Sorry, but it's really it's a really personal thing for me, because I'm like, Christianity pretends to be logical in the face of all evidence that it is not logical, inherently unlogical. Stop trying to appeal to this thing. But I get that autism exists because I also am on the internet. But anyway, he's telling me about this conference. He's like, no, it's transgenderism is knocked down by all of these things. I'm like, yeah, 100%. I fully agree with the Christian apologetics. The part where I don't agree, or where they didn't go, but I don't do this to my kid. I don't impose my thoughts and my reason on him. He gets to make his own conclusions. But I'm like, now how did they teach you as Christians to treat these people? Like, because I know that transgenderism's pillars and like the societal push for it is all knocked down very easily. And I agree 100%. But also, like, if someone who's 20 years old wants to chop their penis off or add a penis to them, an addictomy, as Rush would call it, like, why do we care? Like, why do we as people care? That's like, it's not for you. Your faith will tell you it's not for you, but how do you treat that person? And I think that's the part that a lot of Christian churches are missing. And I think that's the part that the Apologetics Conference might have missed, is like the libertarian and fundamental understanding that, like, you don't have to agree with the decision.
But treating a person like a human being, which is what we should be doing, is not the same thing, though, as allowing their ideology to be pushed on second graders, to be pushed on sixth graders. And it shouldn't
ever be pushed in a public school. Thank you for bringing it back, Megan. I love you so much. You're so subtle.